Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of People of Data, where we get to highlight the wonderful people of data. These are our data leaders from various industries, geographies, and disciplines. Discover how companies are using data, their achievements, and the challenges they face. Today on the show, we have Mike Tamby. Mike has spent 10 years in the data and analytics world. He's had stints at Amazon and LinkedIn, getting started when data science was just becoming a field. And most recently is a data leader at Gong, where he's working on combining predictive analytics with Gen AI. He's also mastered French cooking. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you. I don't know if I'd call myself a master, but
Are you ready to get into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So what is Gong? How does Gong make money? How does data play a part in it? I know we've all heard of Gong, but we'd love to hear it from your mouth.
Yeah, and it's good because I think that we're wanting to get our real message out there. So Gong is an AI platform that transforms revenue growth. And so I think you can kind of think about it as a series of blocks that build on each other. And so at that basic block is conversational intelligence. And this is our bread and butter. So we record calls, email transcripts, use proprietary AI to really come up with actionable recommendations like, you're speaking too fast, you're speaking too much, you're not pausing enough, you're not asking enough questions, you're not asking the right questions. And it's really for coaching and ramping up sales reps and making them better. And then, that's the basis. Then on top of that, we have forecasting. Because you figure you have all this, we call it the kind of the state of the reality data. Like for instance, we call ourselves the reality platform. So once you have all that interaction data and everything going on there, you can sort of marry it with the CRM data and start figuring out, okay, for each of these sales opportunities, what's the probability it's going to close? How much is it going to close for? When will it close? And really come up with an accurate forecast.
Yeah.
On top of that, there's always engagement as well. So who should I talk to next? What should I talk to them about? There's a whole bunch of sales engagement tools, but we really wanted to reimagine it really around our kind of core data. And so it's really that core interaction data and how we can reimagine it all.
Yeah. And so your customers are more B2B SaaS businesses? Is that
we ourselves are a B2B SaaS business. We generally we sell to companies with B2B sales forces, and so tech is a big vertical, but it's not our only vertical.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously, you're a very unique company because data, in some ways, is your product.
Exactly.
You are a data platform fundamentally, and the insights and analytics which come out of it, get productized. So data is, one of the few businesses where data is the product. But how do you then view this in a way, where you have a data and analytics group, which potentially sits outside of, the data product, which is the company. So how do you, view, so what's the how's this sort of break up on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, well, it's both extremely scary and extremely exciting because like all the product leaders are masters in your space. And so, for me, again, if I just think about myself, like started at LinkedIn, we had this amazing member customer data. So when I went to Amazon, I wanted to leapfrog because that the retail signals is just 10x bigger. And so for here, I wanted to go to a place that could really challenge, have amazing data. And so for me, it's like two things. One is, how do I apply all that industry best practice in terms of metrics definition, root cause analysis, predictive models, like, which accounts should we be prioritizing for sales? How should we be segmenting our customers? What are the churn signals in this with the kind of detailed AI technology that we have? So it's like be a best in class analytics data science team, but also be amazing power users of Gong and try to create and chart what I hope will be the future of sales analytics.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what's the culture like at Gong?
I mean, it's a great culture, I would say. So it's interesting because we're built in Israel and sold in the US, and so we have a very kind of a international culture. And so I think it's very direct. One of our operating principles or leadership principles is no sugar. Like just tell me what it is. Don't sugarcoat it. Be very plain to the facts and all of that. Very action oriented, but with a real sense of like building for the long term, and it's not just about getting customers to use the product, but we want to create raving fans. Like, they have to love the product. Like, our product leader always talks about, like, look, if you create workflows, you make people use the workflows, they'll use the product. It doesn't mean they love the product. We want them to love the product, not use the product.
Yeah. And I've had a team in a previous gig. I worked at WeWork, and we had a big function in Israel. We loved working with our Israeli counterparts. So I fully get the directness. At the same time, it's a loving place. How is, what's the culture like in the data team? And, the reason I ask this question is very often, so data is just like very multi-faceted from the point of view, you deal with the entire business. And we see these sort of data teams have their own quirks on how they do different things. How does the sort of culture of the stuff you're doing around predictive analytics and, sort of Gen AI, how does that kind of fit into the company culture?
Yeah. I think it's interesting because Gong is a data platform, and there's so much that you can do in the app. In terms of building this internal analytics function, we've had to sort of establish the value proposition of having a team that has kind of industry best practices and can combine it, because there's a certain level of self-sufficiency. Gong grew for quite a bit without having a really mature internal data analytics function because of the strength of that platform. Yeah. And so it's a very slim team. Like, if you think about what we have in the US between, data analysts, data scientists, data engineers, and just the people who manage the system, it's only 8 people. Wow. It's a very, very small team. So we try to be very, mapped to certain businesses. And it's like, okay, let's really make sure we understand the strategy. And for every top 2 or 3 things, let's make sure we're enabling that. Use a combination of internally built things and stuff that we can combine with via API with our internal application. And so it's very much like each little function feels like a startup at various stages of maturity. And so it's exciting.
Yeah. What's the overall company size?
I'm not allowed to give exact numbers, but in the 800 to 1200 range, if you will.
Got it. So just ballpark, assuming it's 1,000. Very typically, we see in a typical business, we see technology is about 20% of the company, and about 20% of technology is sort of data. So roughly 4% of a company's data. At 1,000 people, you would expect that to be about 40 people. So
well, there are some data teams in Israel, but we are slim. We are a lean team.
Yeah. I think once once data is your product and fundamentally you are a data platform, all of those bets are off, because you have a lot of representation of data skills throughout the business. So, analytics being a little bit slimmer than what's expected is to be expected. What is the data stack look like? Again, where you have so many sort of data platform capabilities in the product. Do you still use a warehouse? What are some of the, what's the day-to-day stack look like?
We do. And we've gone back and forth on this, but we decided we do need the kind of the mature stack. So we have your typical Snowflake core kind of data lake house. On top of that, we have typical Tableau visualization. And then a lot of what we're doing in terms of analysis and or ways that we're plugging in is a lot of like custom Python stuff. And so like for us to be able to access data, a little bit of internal stuff, and be able to serve it to people, let's say via Slack or, within the application, reverse ETL'd in there.
Yeah. So do you use any tools for reverse ETL or ingestion, or given that you're doing Python, is there any DBT, or do you have any orchestrator?
We do use DBT, and there's a bit of orchestration as well. I think we do use a little bit of Workato for a lot of the reverse ETL as well, but yeah.
Got it. Nice. And, the predictive analytics side is obviously very interesting. Snowflake, Databricks, all of these folks are, super sort of supercharged on, time and effort and sort of talking about it. What is the data science and predictive analytics and sort of Gen AI as you're looking at those worlds? Are those powered on top of Snowflake, or how do you look at sort of going and powering some of that technology from the analytics perspective?
Maybe I'm just an old school guy. Like I like sklearn, like open source Python packages. Working on that. We've played around a little bit with some of Snowflake's ability to kind of productionalize some of the Python libraries. We're figuring out if that's where we want to go. But again, I think it's going to be very API driven. So, like for example, we use AWS Bedrock, and so we can play around with some of the foundation models that we want to play with, as well as to interact with some of the core AI services of Gong via API.
Yeah, People of Data is brought to you by 5x. It's no surprise that the data space is one of the most fragmented industries with over 500 vendors in 30 plus categories. The analogy we use is data vendors are selling car parts. Imagine walking into a Honda and instead of selling you a Civic, they sell you an engine and you have to build your own car. That's exactly what's happening in the data world today. 5x is an all-in-one data platform that's incredibly easy to use. We make it easy to consolidate your data from your different systems, clean it, structure it, model it, and make it available through dashboards, reporting, and AI. Whether you're building a data platform from scratch, filling in missing pieces, or need expert data services, 5x has you covered. Imagine a world where any team can become a data and AI team in just a few clicks. If you're interested in making sure you don't get left behind in this new world of data and AI, get a demo at 5x.co. That makes a ton of sense. What's one achievement of your team which you're really proud of? Whether it maps back to a high level business objective, culture. We see a variety of answers on this question because data teams are so unique and different. But I'm very curious, for a company like Gong, what does an achievement to you look like?
Yeah. So I'd say, and so I've been in the role for about 8-9 months. And so the first one that I think is really coming to mind with me, which is a project that started before me, but I've been able to kind of see it all the way through, is really around retention strategy. So, in 2012, I think the entire SaaS industry saw some headwinds. So there's a lot of focus on really understanding drivers of retention. And so it was really about combining this sort of best in class, predictive analytics in terms of, okay, let's look at not just usage, but usage by persona, usage by different types of things to understand what patterns of usage and who they're using and who does them are really, really indicative of value creation for the product as well as retention. So to be able to fine tune on that and then deploy it within the sales team's operating rhythm. And so we're very fortunate to have very operationally minded where if you have a recommendation to great, we can action that, we can put it in a weekly call, we can put it in there. And it's a great partner that we have to really drive that through.
But I was just curious because this is retention, right? So why is retention with the sales team and not with the sort of CS team?
It's a mixture of both, right? The CS team owns success, sales team owns that. They both own the renewal.
Got it. Interesting. And what does the sort of practical applications from an ROI perspective look like? How do you measure this? And what does success look like in a obviously one metric of success around anything to do with retention is obviously lower churn. But how do you really measure this, and what impact have you seen this has driven?
Yeah, so I think the impact measurement is something we're just starting to get into again. We're relatively nascent in this, and so just being able to see the health in terms of usage, being able to see this go down. We have had some conversations about A/B testing and all of that. It's always a little tricky with the B2B sales about how much you're going to try to do some sort of causal method versus pre-post, but that's an open conversation that we're having.
Yeah, and if in order to go execute a project like this, sort of given that you have an 8-person group, which is broadly speaking across all of data and analytics, what's the what's the sort of resources needed on your side to basically go deliver something like this? Is it group ownership? Are they 1 or 2 people focused on this? What's the sort of day-to-day look like working on a advanced analytics project at Gong?
Yeah, and again, this is just us being a very slim team. So I'd say probably, I have, if I think about on the data science and analytics side, you've got about 2 in sales, 2 in post sales. So there's going to be 2 in this kind of post sales area that's thinking about predictive retention, and 50 to 60% of the time is going to be on core foundational data metrics enablement, and the other 40-ish is on things like this. And so it's it's the fact that these are well known for example, sklearn has mature algorithms, so you can take that first set of features, run it through, and get a quick model. Where it takes a lot of time is trying to figure out the next set of features to really optimize. And this is where Gen AI can really help, because you can build a model, you get false positives, false negatives, and you can just ask the model, hey, why did this account churn? It had great usage. Or, hey, why did this account retain? It had horrible usage. And
Yeah.
you can actually really quickly get to that level of like generate new hypothesis, get into the data, make it work. And so you can already start to see a little bit more of the efficiency of these tools coming together.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. So you're using like predictive modeling, and when you say, at the beginning, you mentioned in your intro that you are using this with Gen AI. So you're helping your sales teams actually understand trends by using Gen AI.
Yeah, so I'd say it's where we're at right now, and there's where we want to get to. So where we're at right now is Gen AI as a tool to help us build predictive models. And
Yeah.
by the way, it's funny because I'm at KDD, and this is a big machine learning conference. Everybody's asking like machine learning, Gen AI, how do they fit together?
Yeah.
And people are taking either a pilot or a co-pilot approach. The
Yeah.
approach is either like you ditch the ML and you just ask Gen AI and see what it comes up with. We're not doing that for a variety of reasons, where it's like you keep your ML and then you try to figure out how to basically have Gen AI make it better. So
Yeah.
very simple use case is you go to the business, you say, what are the top 10 things that you think are indicative of retention?
Yeah.
Build a quick, basically like a random forest or an XGBoost classifier. You come up with which ones are predictive, which ones are not, and a score that's of a certain, quality. So then you start going through and you're saying, okay, let's go through some of these false positives, false negatives, and say, why didn't it happen? And you start generating ideas. What about this? What
Yeah.
about this? Oh, integrations. Oh, other little things pop up, and then you can start testing these ideas. So that's
Yeah.
what we're doing right now to try to, systematically sort of improve the model. Or I think where I'd like to get to is, and it's a little bit of this pilot co-pilot idea. One of the ideas that we've talked about, this is just very early, is like if you have a predictive churn model, can you then take the output of that plus the drivers and then ask Gen AI like, hey, is this prediction, do you agree with this prediction? Yes or no? If
Yeah.
so, like, tell me why. And by the way, if you were the CS leader and you had to go talk to this customer, what would you say? So you can
Yeah.
kind of imagine these two systems integrating and working together. Again, this
Yeah.
is very, very nascent stuff, but
Yeah.
I can just start to see the future of how these two will come together to really reinvent sales analytics as far as I'm
Are you
concerned.
using like, off the box LLMs, or are you basically going and building your own LLMs, more like an ELM, sort of expert language model based on sort of your trained data?
So Gong itself has an AMA feature, and
Yeah.
we are using Gong's proprietary technology.
Got it. What's one challenge you've had while, obviously you've been in this role for 8 to 10 months, at these typical hyper growth stage companies, 8 to 10 months often feels like you're already a long-term veteran. But what's been sort of challenging, and and how are you working towards resolving one of these challenges?
When an organization is moving this fast, you have to figure out how to first get in the trenches with them, prove immediate value, but then also, get them at the level of like, but let's also think outside the box.
Yeah.
And so I think we're probably farther along with our CS team. We're making strides with our sales teams. And so it's just figuring out how to get into that rhythm where they're moving fast, priorities are shifting, but you're also trying to establish yourself and try to kind of get to this bigger star of like, oh, there's a better way that we can do this type thing. It's non-trivial in a rapidly moving company.
Yeah. And, if you have someone listening to the show who's interested in working with Gong and, sort of working on the data team with sort of Mike, what is something which we might not have spoken about in the show, which is, important for them to understand in figuring out if Gong is right for them? And then also, given it's just a hyper competitive market, a lot of people want to work inside data, inside sort of inside top. In your interview process, what's something which is you really look for if someone wants to stand out? What's their best bet at making an impression?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what I'm looking for is this is going to risk sounding like unicorn hunting, but bear with me here. One is someone who can really understand business context and translate it down to a specific data science problem. Like, okay, I can talk to you and understand what you're trying to solve. This is the data science problem there. And then someone who can actually act now, move quickly, deliver fast, but I'd say deliver today, design for tomorrow. In the sense of like, okay, as I think about it, here's something I can do to you in the next week and a half. But I also, in my mind, have what the 1 month, the 3 month, and the 6 month looks like, so I can kind of bring our stakeholders along with that.
Yeah. How do you test for that when you interview people?
I mean, it's an example of, let's say, here's a hypothetical problem, a business problem. It's sort of like case interviewing, if you will. Like,
Yeah.
business problem has come to you with a specific thing. How would you work it through? And I kind of play that business partner and kind of walk it through, plus experience. Like, tell me about experiences you've had and have you worked through.
How does folks which are not involved in the data science, like a data analyst or a data engineer, what are they evaluated on? Really, how do they go partner with sort of data science, given you have quite mature, you have a mature data platform? How does data engineering fit in?
Yeah, so I think with data engineering, that's very much a deep technical function. A little bit, I'm not going to get into specifics about this, but again, we're kind of built in Israel, sold in the US, and so we do have collaboration that we have to have with our own product team, their infrastructure, our infrastructure. So really being able to get into the details at not just Snowflake, but at the AWS level, the permissioning, the technology, really thinking about optimization. So we're looking for very strong technical people there.
Awesome. And are you currently hiring right now?
Not at the moment, though that may change in a few months.
Awesome. Michael, thank you so much for being on the show.